but anyway, I welcome all of you to the tax forfeited land modernization project update. We welcome Heather Bessler here, and I understand that Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager, is available online. So if we want to make sure that she's available, but I was going to let Deputy County Manager Francois make a few opening remarks if she's available, but otherwise I can go right into it.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. We can now. We can
at
now.
Twice the volume, Karen,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes.
It's not you. That was a we thing. We're good. Go for it.
Okay.
Now we gotcha.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners and County Manager O'Connor. Thank you for letting us be here today with you. I'm sorry that I couldn't be in chambers, but I do know that the whole team is there, and we are very excited to be able to share with you how through modernization we have been able to re-envision, restructure, and rebrand the work of what was formerly known as the Tax Forfeited Land Unit of the Property Tax Records and Election Services Department. We began modernization in this area in late 2019 because we realized a need to be intentional about putting our residents first and looking at our work through a racial equity lens and a lens of compassionate regulation, because we want to be able to ensure to the best of our ability that we can keep our residents safe and healthy and in their homes. Modernization has been a very strong team effort that has included not only the voices of our staff, but the voices of staff from across the county, and most importantly, the voices of our residents. To tell you about this amazing work, I am pleased to turn it over to our Auditor Treasurer and Director of Property Tax Records and Election Services, Heather Bessler. Heather?
Thank you, Deputy County Manager Francois, and I am going to turn it over to Auditor Treasurer Bessler. I just want to, first of all, and I'm going to let you make opening remarks about tax forfeiture, but I just wanted to say that she has asked that we're going to let her do the whole presentation, and then we'll ask questions. So hold your questions unless you have to have a burning clarification question, but we'll let her go through her presentation, which she says will be about a half hour long, and then we'll have discussion after that. So we'll have time for that. So thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Deputy County Manager Francois, and Commissioners and County Manager O'Connor for having us here today. I'm very excited to talk about our modernization project. And first, a couple housekeeping things before we move into the presentation. For those who aren't familiar with the tax forfeiture process in Minnesota, I just want to give a little bit of background of what that means. Tax forfeiture is a statutory process that Minnesota counties must follow. When a property owner fails to pay their property taxes for whatever reason, state statute gives them a period of time to redeem their property or to pay those delinquent taxes. After that set period of time has expired and they haven't redeemed their property, the property will tax forfeit. And what that means is the title of the property transfers to the state of Minnesota in trust for the local taxing jurisdictions, and that the county where the property is located is then responsible for the administration and eventual sale of that property. Without further ado, I'll move on to our presentation about the modernization project. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Heather Bessler. I'm the County Auditor Treasurer and the Director of Property Tax Records and Election Services. With me today is part of our tax forfeited land team sitting in the back there. We have Nick Hansen, the supervisor of the area, and then Abby Majeski, Mike Wolf, and Nick Rosenthal are present, and then not able to be here today is Tanisha Lewis and our Deputy Director, Penny Favre-Nelson. Thank you all for being here today, and I know they're eager to hear your remarks about our project. So today will be after the introductions. I'll be shortly moving into why are we doing a modernization project, what the guiding principles are of the project. Next, I'll move into discussing rebranding of the tax forfeited land unit and what that means. The rebranding not only seeks to rename the business unit, but also to communicate a fundamental shift that's occurring with the work that the unit is doing. And then last, I'll touch on the project work plan and specifically focus on our future endeavors. So the slide before you shows our guiding principles for our modernization project. The reason why we're doing a modernization project is you, as the county board, has recognized the need to invest in modernization projects across the county. Information and Public Records, our service team, a few years back implemented a service team-wide modernization project with tax forfeited land being part of that modernization project. It was recognized that within our TFL, our tax forfeited land operations, an opportunity existed. We needed to model fiscal accountability. We needed to enhance stewardship with the goal of fostering community, where all residents are valued and are given the opportunity to thrive. The strategic intent of the project was to comply with Minnesota state statutes, ultimately return tax forfeited properties back to tax generation status, and really for it to be a living example of Ramsey County's priorities. At the core of the principles of this project are the Ramsey County priorities of residents first and advancing racial equity. We look to build programs and policies, that second ring on the diagram, where these priorities are the forefront. A key component of ensuring the project and work is informed by community. So far to date, we have met with a few community organizations that in the past have worked with tax forfeited properties or have indicated that they would in the future like to work with tax forfeited properties. We've also met with current and past property owners that have been impacted by tax forfeiture, lessees of those buildings, so inhabitants that weren't owners but were occupying those buildings. We've also talked with our various local government partners to learn what they would like to see for programs and policies going forward. So, moving on to the rebrand of the tax forfeited land group. A key component of the modernization project is the official rebranding, not only of the unit, but of the associated work. In statute, it talks about the point of the tax forfeiture process is to bring properties back to a productive tax generation status. But when you really start to think about what productivity means, it can mean a lot of different things depending upon the context in which it's in. So we are choosing to look at productivity in a holistic manner. So you'll see before you that we have decided to rebrand the tax forfeited land unit to be the productive properties unit. On the slide is the mission statement of this unit, and I'll take a minute to read that. To cultivate productive properties for residents, the environment, and the community through preserving home ownership, acting as environmental stewards, investing in the surrounding community, and sustaining the local tax base. The slide conveys the holistic productive properties approach. There are 3 work value streams in this approach: preserving ownership, community investment, and environmental stewardship. And this diagram actually, and how it's portrayed, this work is portrayed, actually was a product of working and meeting with our community partners. It originally started off as a linear presentation, and through their feedback, they said, you know, it makes more sense if it's a relational diagram, because a property can't truly be productive until all 3 of these value streams are overlapping. So with that, we adjusted how we are presenting this work and how we are going about this work. So in the next coming slides, I'll detail more about what these 3 work value streams will look like. And then in subsequent slides, I'll give examples of the work that's already being done to uplift this rebrand. So the first of the work value streams is preserving ownership. This area focuses not only on the property owner, but in many instances, the inhabitant leasing the property as well. It seeks to provide support to communities through sustaining the local tax base. Components of this are pre-forfeiture prevention efforts, which is aimed at helping homeowners and renters to stay in the properties they're in, to remain in that stable housing, and to provide them access to county services, specifically through a partnership with the Enterprise Services Department, utilizing the Navigators, the program that was recently stood up. Another component of preserving ownership is educational, financial, and tax literacy tools. We already offer some tools pre-forfeiture to homeowners and occupiers as they're looking to go into a confession of judgment, which is a payment plan to pay off those delinquent taxes. But we're looking to expand the tools that we offer. We're looking to leverage existing methods and models of community engagement. Specifically, in the county, we already have the Cultural Community Connectors and the Trusted Messenger program. So looking to expand the scope of those projects to include community outreach for tax forfeited land properties, or potential properties that are on the list for potential forfeiture. One of the last prongs that I'll talk about for preserving ownership is to provide an accessible and equitable and streamlined repurchase program. So the first component of this would be making sure that homeowners are aware that this opportunity exists. So leveraging community partners to help educate homeowners and occupiers. And then also utilizing community partners to look at financing options that could be available to help facilitate the repurchase of these properties if they do indeed forfeit. This prong rests heavily on cross-county collaborations, so working with our other county departments to make sure that our work is uplifting the work that those departments are already doing and not in conflict with that work. The second value stream of the productive properties framework is environmental stewardship. This value stream really aims to operationalize the reuse, recycle, and renovate for reinvestment program, or as we all know it, the 4R program. Components of this value stream are hazardous waste remediation and disposal, both pre and post forfeiture. So collaborating with environmental health and identifying those environmental risks that are either posing barriers to people staying in their homes pre-forfeiture or going back to their homes post-forfeiture. Other related components are conservation, recycling, green demolition. They seek to uphold the tenets of environmental and fiscal accountability. An exciting part of this piece is that PTRIS and the Property Tax Records and Election Services Department and the Environmental Health Department are establishing a memorandum of understanding between the two departments to ensure that there is a set level of support and services that will be available to homeowners and people occupying forfeited properties. The last value stream, but certainly not the least valuable, is the third, is the community investment value stream. This area focuses on creating and sustaining equitable housing through community and government collaborations, utilizing our portfolio properties for community enrichment, and also utilizing alternative property sale methods, and making sure that those sale methods are accessible and equitable. The government acquisition equitable housing collaboration aims to move vacant tax forfeited properties into ownership by a local government. Local governments can acquire tax forfeited properties for a reduced cost for affordable housing purposes. And so leveraging that area of statute to move tax forfeited properties into the realm of affordable and equitable housing. And potentially utilizing the HRA now that it'll be levying to move those properties in that manner. Another component is the portfolio properties. What that means is a lot of times properties will forfeit because they're non-conforming. They're not buildable, they're sliver parcels, and they sometimes end up in a county's portfolio for a very long time because no one wants to purchase them. These properties are a resource, however, because they can be used for community enrichment, such as container gardening. We can do short-term leases for community events, community use. So really leveraging those properties to make sure that they are benefiting the community. And then the last component is alternative property sales. State statute a few years ago was changed to allow counties to utilize broker sales and online property sales. This is a really exciting opportunity, mainly because the traditional model of property auctions tends to be predatory. People bid against each other, driving the prices up of the properties so it doesn't make them affordable for the average resident that would come in. It also is not a friendly environment. Your average person in the public does not feel, this type of auction isn't accessible to them. And so you're excluding large segments of the property from purchasing tax forfeited properties. Yep. So moving to broker sales, it allows us to target how we advertise these properties. They can go on MLS. So we can target market these properties. We can also do mass marketing of these properties. Another appealing aspect of broker sales is that they're on sale on MLS for an extended period of time, whereas an auction is just one period of time and people may not be able to attend due to schedule conflicts. This allows greater accessibility to all people to purchase in this manner.
So,
We do have one question.
yeah,
Commissioner
do we
McDonough.
do all our sales now through the broker, or do we still do some auction sales?
Chair, Commissioner McDonough, we have not moved to the broker sales quite yet. We have gotten through the RFP process, and we have brokers lined up. We're just finishing the paperwork, and we look to begin utilizing broker sales this fall.
And once we do that, then we'll do all our sales through the broker?
There will be some properties where it makes more sense to do a public auction as they're non-conforming and they can't be built. But the majority of the sales will happen through broker sales.
Right. Yep, thank you, because for the reasons you identified, I mean, that's really going to be critical here.
Absolutely.
That was a small group that understood the auctions and how to participate and be successful that way.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm assuming it'll stay on the MSL list till it's sold.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ortega, their statute is specific about how the property can be listed on MLS and the length of time it can be on MLS. I believe it's listed for a 10-day period or a period close to that length where bidders are allowed to put in an offer, and then state statute then provides for the county to ultimately choose who the property will go to based upon the offer that are put in.
So,
Yes, Commissioner Ortega.
so in other words, it's really like an electronic auction. If it's only for 10 days, right, and it's not sold, then it goes,
Commissioner, it can go back on MLS,
okay.
and it can then be open for additional potential purchasers.
So is there an interruption in there? I'm trying to get a handle on how this is.
Yeah, Commissioner, once the initial period is complete, the property comes off MLS. We evaluate all of the offers, and then if there is not an offer that we can move forward with, it then is listed once again on MLS.
Okay, but if it's on the list for 10 days and you get no offer, then what happens?
Commissioner, that, I believe it stays on MLS at that point.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, yep, that administrative aspect is up to the county to determine, and we're still working through a few of those details.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, continue.
So as the team worked to stand up and utilize this productive properties model, certain pieces of the work are already being implemented. So I'd like to take a few minutes to walk you through a few of those exciting pieces, because I think they're very illustrative of what the ultimate goal is of this framework. The first example I'd like to talk about is the 735 Margaret project. I believe everyone in this room is familiar with this project. It was a 4-hour project that languished for a few years after forfeiture. But as part of this modernization project, it was identified as an opportunity to invest in the community and to have community engagement with our properties. We specifically met with neighbors of the properties with Commissioner Ortega to learn about what they wanted to see happen with the property. And ultimately, they conveyed that they wanted the county to finish the renovation work on the property, and that they wanted community investment in this property. And so with that feedback, we have partnered with the Workforce Solutions Department to utilize the Goodwill Easter Seals construction training program. This program offers industry-specific programs that expand the skills and qualifications of the participants in specific areas. They're 8 to 12 weeks. The construction program is a 12-week program. And participants receive stipends or training wages as they are participating in the program. And then I'll read a few statistics that have actually been updated since the slide was finalized. So over the last year, there have been 8 classes of program participants that have worked at the property. In those 8 classes, there have been 48 participants. Of the 48, 42 of them have graduated from the program, and 6 are currently on site. 44% of the program participants reside in Ramsey County. 63 of the participants identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. There has been a 60% job placement rate, with 88% of those placed having found work in the construction industry. And then I'd like to share with you all feedback that we received from Jim Wilkerson. He's the Workforce Development Manager, Employee Relations for Goodwill. And these are his comments. Participants graduating from the construction training program have had great success in job placement. One of the most recent classes had 100% job placement after graduation, which has never happened before in the time I've been with Goodwill. Employers are looking at past experience, and they notice that the participants have had a much better, rounded experience since Goodwill began working with Ramsey County on the Margaret project. Thank you for being our partner in making the participants' experience the best possible. This project has been the most valuable teaching on-site project we have had since I joined the department. Very exciting. The Margaret project is scheduled to wrap up at the end of October, and then at that point, the disposition method will be decided upon for that property.
And, yeah, Commissioner McDonough.
Yeah, thanks, and I appreciate your updated numbers here, because I'm still concerned. 1/3 of the program participants lived in Ramsey County. You said 44.
Yep.
If this is a Ramsey County workforce solution working with Goodwill through our why aren't they 100% Ramsey County residents if they're working through our program?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, we have Workforce Solutions and Petrus partnered to the point where Workforce Solutions introduced us to the Goodwill construction program. And then we proceeded forward with working with that program as it was partially based in Ramsey County. Other participants are from other metro counties, but we wanted to make sure that at least some of the participants were Ramsey County based.
So it's not actually a workforce contract with Goodwill.
No.
In their program. This is a Goodwill Easter Seal program that's a standalone that you've worked with.
Correct.
Do we have the potential in the future? I think this is really a good path here. Do we have the potential in the future to actually focus more on our Ramsey County folks that are actually, engaged with Workforce Solutions to move closer to 100% of these folks are actually Ramsey County?
Yeah, Commissioner McDonough, myself and Ling Becker, the director over there, are excited about the potential opportunities. I don't believe all of those opportunities have been identified, but we have had discussions on continuing to collaborate in the future and certainly looking to make sure that those collaborations impact Ramsey County residents and are investing in Ramsey County residents the
Thank you.
most.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortega.
Yeah, to this point, Jim, that's a good point, and I think that we might have a contract with Easter Seal, I'm not sure. or at least our workforce does.
Well, I'm sure they do.
And so it's a pool, right? And that's how we get that mix. So the question I've asked is, are we getting Ramsey County folks, let's say on Hennepin County projects? And that's I think one of the measurements we have to also look at.
Thank you. Great questions. I know you wanted us to wait, but I have a question too. So when you get this ready to be on the market, how will that go? Will it be market rate or will it be auction? Not really auction. Well, how will you said you'll decide how you're going to, put it out into the community. What would those options be?
Madam Chair, the two options are potentially selling it at market rate. We'll have to look at what the appraisal comes back at for the property and weigh that in consideration to the cost of the investment on the property. But then the other option is working with a local government partner for the property to be moved into affordable housing.
Yeah. That's always
Also
the big
be
question.
affordable housing.
Yeah.
With our goals here, should be no question.
Thank you for that. We
Yep.
understand. Do you have a, thanks. Okay, thank you.
Another example of this work is the land management system. The need for this system was identified early on in the rapid assessment that was performed for this modernization project. This is really a foundational building block piece for this project and for the new productive properties unit. It not only helps organize the property information, but it actively assists staff in managing the properties. And it also assists with the advertising and the disposition of the properties. There's a external component to the system that is scheduled to be turned on by the end of the year, where properties are mapped and property information and pictures are available externally to the public to see these properties and see what is potentially available for sale. After a competitive procurement process, the county went with a land management system that's created by a company called eProperties Plus. This system is widely used countrywide. It's known as being a way to manage land bank properties. And land banks are just a very short leap to tax forfeited properties. We manage them much in the same manner. And so this property was able to be utilized, or the system was able to be utilized for managing tax forfeited properties. The functionality really assists with managing the full life cycle of the properties. Like I said earlier, it includes property mapping, document creation and retention, tracking of income and expenses. And it really helps us serve our customers, our residents better. It makes the data on the properties more accessible. It makes it queryable, and we can report on that data and make it easily accessible on our website, externally facing. And then, like I said, the external facing component will go live later this year, but the internal component went live a few months ago. Another example of the work that is uplifting the productive properties work framework is pre-forfeiture prevention. This effort is in its second year of operation. It's seen success in not only preventing forfeitures, but also assisting residents in accessing county services through that collaboration with the Navigator program. And then for those who aren't familiar with the delinquency and forfeiture process, when I say pre-forfeiture, that's referring to property owners and properties that have not gone where the title is still with the owner, has not forfeited to the state, and those owners have a time period to redeem those properties and those delinquent taxes. And so this effort really focuses on those properties, the pre-forfeiture properties, where prevention efforts can do a lot to prevent these properties from ultimately forfeiting. At the beginning of 2021, there were 240 properties that were facing possible forfeiture on August 2nd. Throughout the first part of 2021, staff from the recorder's and tax office, from the county attorney's office, researched the properties and worked to identify potential title issues, homestead issues, environmental issues, other legal issues that may be contributing to the property's current property tax status. Purpose of this was twofold. First, it was to help inform our outreach efforts following that, but also to see if there was anything the county could do on its own to make sure that the county wasn't contributing to this delinquent tax status on the properties. So if properties are eligible for homestead, researching that and making sure that would be something that we could talk to the owner in subsequent outreach efforts. On top of on this effort was also an augmented outreach effort through the mail. And through that, we narrowed the list down to less than 100 properties. And then at that point, the staff began reaching out to property owners and lessees via phone and email. Staff contacted more than 75 properties via the phone. And then the next step was to visit the residential properties that were left on the list. Specifically, the residential properties where phone contact had not been successful. This is where we specifically partnered with the navigators. The teams that went out to the properties consisted of 2 navigators from the Enterprise Services Department and 1 of the tax forfeited land property managers. This outreach resulted in narrowing the list down to 22 properties at the time of forfeiture on August 2nd. I have a few stories that our property managers and navigators have shared about this outreach work. I'll share a couple of them. The first story is the pre-forfeiture team arrived at a property and the door was answered by a little girl and her mother. The girl explained her mother did not speak English. The navigators, who were part of the pre-forfeiture team, were able to utilize a translation service to communicate with the mother and learn the mother was unaware of the property's delinquent tax status. The woman explained that due to a recent injury, she was unable to drive, but had the funds available and wanted to make payment at that moment. The navigators and property manager were able to resolve the tax delinquency on the spot and visited more with the mother about resources available for medical, financial, transportation services, and set up a follow-up plan for the navigators to further assist with these services. And then a second story from this outreach. The pre-forfeiture team, composed of 2 navigators and a property manager, approached a property for the 3rd time to discover all the prior door knockers and cards that were left on previous visits were undisturbed. A neighbor in a nearby yard chatted with the team and indicated he did not know the property owner, but was sure his mother did. The pre-forfeiture team gave him a business card and asked if he could have his mother contact the owner, as there is still a small amount of unpaid delinquent property tax. The next week, the property manager on the team received a phone call from the mother. She indicated she was unable to get a hold of her neighbor, so instead went online and paid her neighbor's delinquent taxes herself. I share this because this is not only a great example of Ramsey County and community residents working together to prevent a neighbor's property from forfeiting, but it's very inspirational. And then the last thing I would like to share in relation to this is a statement made by one of our staff who are part of these pre-forfeiture teams. The number one fear and concern which I encounter from both owners and tenants in pre-forfeiture outreach, whether it be by phone or property visit, is, if the property forfeits, will I have to vacate right away? Giving assurances to residents in our pre-forfeiture outreach that we do not kick people out of their homes upon forfeiture, and instead work with them both pre and post forfeiture for the best possible outcome, is very rewarding and is one of the many aspects of this forfeiture prevention initiative which make this work so valuable. So then moving to another example of the work that's uplifting this productive properties framework is the work being done at 765 Front Avenue. Instead of selling this property as is, it's a vacant lot, we're taking a proactive approach to it. This lot had some environmental contamination, needed some testing and remediation. So instead of selling it as is, we utilized the Brownfields grant program that the state offers. And we're rewarded funding to do soil testing for that property. And we just received word from the MPCA that they're releasing the property for container gardening. So we are working with environmental health and public health to put a short-term lease in place for community use. We're also working with them to identify other potential properties in our portfolio that can be potentially part of the Summerlands program or other such programs that would facilitate a short-term lease for community use. Besides this property, we also have a second property, 778 Smith, that is a current recipient of the Brownfield grant money for testing and remediation efforts as well. So then my final slide I have to share is the modernization work plan. This slide outlines the modernization project at a very high level. Each component of the plan specifically upholds these 3 work streams identified in the framework. And this work really seeks to comprehensively refocus the work on the resident and advancing racial equity. The work plan includes all the work we've already discussed, plus some additional items such as legislative activism and compassionate regulation. So identifying items that can be potentially included in the county platform, professional association involvement. We work with these professional associations not only to carry statutory changes, but to bring education to our peers across the state. And so looking to share this work and this rebrand of the work and the unit with the rest of the state in hopes of bringing others to the goal of not just looking at tax forfeiture as a black and white statutory process, but as something that we can really leverage to bring about change. And so then another component would be potential county auditor delegations that would streamline processes like repurchase to really shorten that time frame from the time of application to when the previous owner again occupies the property, or they may have never left the property, but to get it back in the title in their name. And then last, to build relationships with our local government partners. And this really comes into play when we're looking at the equitable housing collaborations and moving tax forfeited properties to affordable and equitable housing. And then ensuring that occupants can stay in their properties. So working with our local government partners and making sure that we aren't facilitating a process that would force people out of their homes. So with that, I just moved to key takeaways that this is an outcome-focused project that's informed by the community. And our TFL rebrand will occur this fall, and will, through the help with the communications department, will be communicated countywide then. So thank you for letting me share our work, and Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
I really appreciate that, Director Bessler. This is very exciting and great work. It is inspiring, so thank you for that. I am excited about key takeaways. I've been asking for departments that come before us to say, what do you think our key takeaways should be? Because we all come out with our own, so thank you for that as well. So I have Commissioner Mattis Castillo, Commissioner Reinhardt, and Commissioner McDonough, but did you want to say something first?
One question.
County Manager?
Yeah, I'll be real brief, Madam Chair. First, modernization's been a topic that Information and Public Records have talked about for about 2 years. This is a tangible example of the approach being taken and what it looks like. This is not the only area where modernization is occurring. I think it can be hard to understand. Like, I struggle to sometimes make it feel concrete as more than just a theory. This is a really good example, and I want to highlight that. More to come. In the fail forward work we're doing, like with a group with the other cohort of counties, we had our kickoff a couple weeks ago, and in that kickoff, I had the folks from IPR on there saying, this is our modernization project, the way we're trying to approach this. And I said, great, what an opportunity now to bring it broader across the county. So I see some real productive and opportunities for seeds. Heather, could you end by renaming again the folks from your team? I know you started there, but I think I just want to give them a call out one more time if that's okay, and then
Sure,
we'll jump.
I'd be happy to. Nick Hansen, the supervisor of the unit, and then we have Abby Majeski, Michael Wolf, and Nick Rosenthal. And then Tanisha Lewis was not able to be with us today, but she's an integral part of the team as well. And then my deputy director, Penny Favre-Nelson, was not able to be here today either.
Thank you. Can't do it without all of you.
Thank you for recognizing me. Great work, everyone. Thank you so much. Commissioner Mattis Castillo.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for a great presentation, Heather, and it is really thoughtful, and I like how it's laid out. I think there's a couple areas that probably could use some help outside your realm, and we've had these conversations a lot, and like when I saw these slides, I was like, oh, you clearly were talking to Metric Giles, right? Like he's all over these slides. Right, and the way we talk about it, but some of the areas of tax forfeiture, we have neighborhoods that are labeled accelerated forfeiture in targeted communities, which often impacts communities of color, especially in our community. You probably remember it was 2 years ago now when the Pettiford brothers, we had a situation with the two Native brothers who lost their house to tax forfeiture, and they were in this accelerated forfeiture areas, which were designated by the legislature. Right, and so they have a shorter window of time to do all this pre-forfeiture work and to get back on payments. And so I think this is an area that on our legislative team should really look at and partner with your department to say, look, we're doing all this work. We're trying to keep people in their houses if they're already there, but we can't do it if they have an additional timeline on their heads just because they live in a poor neighborhood. And so I really appreciate your work, and I know we've had lots of conversations and you've worked with community, but also just want to give you the chance to say, you know, if there's something beyond the work that you're doing, that there's an external force putting pressure, because I know a lot of it is in statute around all of this stuff, is how do we do that work differently?
Yeah. Madam Chair, Commissioner Mattis Castillo, you're right in that a lot of the processes are in statute. They're statutorily mandated. We have to follow them. That was why compassionate regulation was a part of this project, in that taking a softer look at these statutory requirements, specifically related to the targeted community provision that you spoke of. There's really two options that can be taken in relation to the program. It is in statute, and the statutory part is the program for targeted communities, but then there's a separate piece about the accelerated forfeiture that reduces the redemption period to 1 year. But then there's also a policy piece that the city has control over, where their policy identifies the properties that are in the targeted communities program, and they have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. I have a meeting scheduled this week with the city, Nicole Goodman from the city, to discuss this. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of what this looks like, between 2016 and 2020, there were 130 properties that forfeited in the city of St. Paul. 52 of those properties were not in the targeted area, so 40%, or in other words, 60% of the properties were in the targeted area. Of the 52, only 9 were homestead and not subject to that 1-year redemption. And so the majority of properties that are forfeiting are in this accelerated forfeiture area.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, and then if I
Yes,
could just
Commissioner
follow up.
Mascastio.
And I also thank you for doing all the work at 765 Front. I know we get a lot of emails and calls that we share back and forth about that particular property. So if it gets approved for container gardening and we can do that, will at some point it be approved for building? I mean, is the ultimate goal to get that space back so that we could put housing there? Or is it are we just intending to go to gardening?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mascastio, that's an excellent question. In order to move it to other usage besides container gardening, there would have to be some further remediation done on the property, soils, otherwise. And so there is the potential to move it to a different status, but I'll be honest, we haven't looked into it further at this point, but that is definitely something we can do.
I mean, I think if we're gonna if our goal is to get to productive tax base, a container garden is lovely, but doesn't get us to producing
Yes.
tax base. Or you need, or people are community is looking for gardens that are beyond 3 years and beyond 1 year at a time. And so to think about what's a longer term plan. Because there's still a cost. We still have to go out, we mow it, we take care of that spot, right? We get all these calls that the grass is too long or whatever. And so some opportunity there too. But I really appreciate the work that has been done and continue to do and how responsive your team is. The last question I have quickly is, we have other land that Public Works has on their books. Will that be incorporated into this land as we're looking? We've been talking a lot about mapping, right? So for instance, the lot on Maryland Avenue that we talked about last week, will that be incorporated here, or are we gonna keep those two different kind of land mapping?
Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share?
Do you know?
It's a question we'll take back. I don't have an immediate answer for you, Commissioner, Madam Chair, Commissioner. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Getting the TFL work started and getting out of the realm of it's all statutory and what we can do was a big first step. I acknowledge that asking the question of all land in some way gets viewed as Ramsey County land, not by department, is a follow-up that I pledge that we can do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Reinhardt and then Commissioner McDonough. And then Claire Sundin.
Thank you. Well, we are really out of time, so I guess I would just ask if you could get answers back. First of all, I love the rebranding, the brokered sales, and going that way. Especially when it comes to some of the predatory purchasing that had taken place, and we knew that was happening, and this is just such a better way to go. My question is, one of the questions I have is the percentage of tax forfeited properties that are owner occupied. And for those that are not owner occupied, there are tenants more than likely. And at what point do we reach out to the tenants so that they know what's coming or what's happening? I think that that's going to be important. And then the other item was, one of the things that we are trying to be very careful about or work with is the naturally occurring affordable housing. And so I assume you're working with economic development on that, because I do know that There have been times, one recently in one of my communities, where they received county funding for tax forfeited properties, and then they fixed it up to the point where it wasn't affordable anymore. They did not get their money back. I mean, we got our money back because, and I think that that's something that's really touchy, and how do you deal with that? I mean, we have a way to deal with it in the end, but does that happen often, or how do we protect against that?
Do you want, I mean, do you have a quick answer? If you have a quick answer, you could just give it to us now. I mean, we are,
yeah.
unless you want to send it to us all in writing, that's great too. Okay,
Madam Chair, I'll send it to the whole board in writing.
yes, in writing. Okay, good questions, thank you. Commissioner McDonough.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. This is all good work. Real quickly on brokered sales, I was surprised we haven't been doing that already, because it's been quite a while since we worked on that. I'm wondering if we could maybe get like a report. I think we always got kind of a report on the auctions, to just see how we're doing on that, and then especially where we're choosing not to move properties through the brokered sales, I'd like to get an understanding of why we're not doing that. So if we could get like a, I don't know, biannual or annual report on that, so we get a sense of how we're doing there.
Great question. If there's no other burning questions, obviously, Director Bessler will entertain any other questions you have, but thank you so much for all of your work and your amazing team. Thank you so much. Thanks to the board for great discussion, and we look forward to continued good work from you, so thank you.
Thank you.
The workshop is
1:30 downstairs.
1:30 downstairs
Good job, Heather.
for our next
Thank
workshop.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.